So here we go again.
Yes, बैठते हैं ना बैठे
Baithe.
हैं.
So I have a quick question for you on
Yes.
cryptocurrencies, right? It started with Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and a lot of people were saying Bitcoin is the solution, right? But do you know what the problem is? It's a solution to what problem?
Well, is it to solve a problem for people who don't want government intervention, don't like that? They believe in decentralized currencies. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, but a lot of people believe that the origin story of Bitcoin is from 2008, 2009, right? Um,
Okay.
that's when the Bitcoin was actually launched.
What is it? People solving people's anxiety issues? No, what is it solved for?
Yeah, I'll explain you what that is, right?
Okay.
So there was a paper published in 1982
Oh, well, okay.
called as Byzantine's fault,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And Bitcoin is actually Byzantine's fault tolerant,
Yeah.
right? Do you know what the fault was?
I have an idea, but what are you going to just
Yeah,
reiterate?
I have a magic trick to show
You have a
you.
magic trick to show it?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So we're
Was
gonna.
he a magician? No.
All right. So here we go.
Okay.
So I've got cards.
Okay. Clearly, you're
Uh,
showing a magic trick. Okay.
so let's assume that this is the king of Byzantine,
Okay.
right? Byzantine
The
Empire,
heart king. Okay.
and because he's a hard king, थोड़ा अय्याश था, ठीक है?
Okay.
So he had like four queens, and this guy was clearly very busy with all his wives and everything, right?
Yeah.
But he had three very good army generals,
Okay.
right? And these generals, they realized that, if you want the empire to stay strong, you have to attack neighboring countries
Yeah.
or neighboring empires and then grab hold of their gold. So they decided to attack on the neighboring empire,
Mhm.
right? Now all three of them are attacking the neighboring empire, and as you might be aware, right, that if you have to win a war, or if you have to win a fight, there has to be a coordinated attack.
Mhm.
Now, assuming that within the empire, this neighboring empire, there were three mountains, and all three of them are sitting on the top of each mountain. But the first guy reached at 7 a.m. on his peak, the
Mm.
second guy reached at say 8 or 9 a.m., and the third guy reached at say 10 or 11 a.m., right? And the first guy sent his messenger, Heart of Nine, right? Stating that we're going to do a coordinated attack at say 1 a.m.,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then he goes from here to the second peak, and then he tells them that, okay, tomorrow morning we're going to attack at 1 a.m., right? This guy says, boss, I just arrived at 9 p.m.,
Yeah.
so I can't do 1 a.m., I can do it 2 a.m., right? So then this guy is like, okay, fine, I'll take this message, and he went to the third peak to inform him that, boss, we're gonna attack at not 1 a.m. but 2 a.m., right? And before he just realizes that the shortest path to the first peak is through the city, through the neighboring
Mhm.
empire, right? So he goes through the neighboring empire, but then they caught hold of him that, boss, this guy looks like someone from the Heart Kingdom,
Okay.
so we
I
can't.
wonder why.
Yeah, so if that we are going to be under attack,
Yes.
right? So what they do in a smart way is that they replace this, they kill him,
Mm.
right? And they replace him with six of hearts,
Okay.
right? And they send a wrong message, right? Now imagine that each peak is not actually a peak, but it's a node,
Yeah.
right? And the message that this guy is carrying is actually a data packet,
Yeah.
right? And and the whole system is actually a network, right? Now what happens in a network, or what happens on the internet, right? Every data packet is a copy of an original one.
Sure.
So if when you upload a photo on Facebook or Instagram, the original photo still stays back on your laptop, right, or your device, and there's a copy of it gets which gets uploaded. Now comes the cool part, right? Now, when in 1982, when they were thinking about transferring money via internet, right? Money can be a copy
Copy.
of
Yeah, yeah,
something, right? Like assuming I'm sending you $100, and then my $100 is still in my account, but you still get $100. That will just
yeah.
cause a crazy amount of inflation, right? So they wanted to figure out a system wherein the message is sent without getting tampered,
Yeah.
and it's not a copy, right? So that's where the king's role comes into play, right? Now, if the king decided that we're going to attack at 1 a.m., every fucking general has to follow it,
Yeah.
right? They don't have an option. This is the role that the centralized bank plays on an internet, right? When transferring the money, it goes through a centralized bank so that my account gets debited while your account
Yeah.
gets credited, right? Now, here comes 2008, and the first white paper is published for Bitcoin. And the solution that it offered is that each node can actually verify the transaction,
Yeah.
right? And we had a concept called linked list in C programming. I
Yeah.
think if you
I
would have,
have, yeah.
you must have
Back in the
studied
day.
it back in
Yes.
the day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But no one really took it so seriously, attaching a data packet, like an address to the data packet, right? Now, imagine that on steroids. That is essentially your blockchain,
Yeah.
and
That's what you were referencing.
that's what I'm referring to, and that's that, and which
Okay.
is why Bitcoin is a Byzantine fault tolerant,
Uh-huh.
and the first system uh, that was Byzantine fault tolerant.
Yeah. Awesome. Is that what we were talking about? Going to talk about, or
So
like
no,
what
we're
are we?
gonna talk about cryptocurrencies in general, but I
Okay.
thought this nugget was a really interesting
It's
one
interesting. I
to
think
start with.
your magic trick did lend some color.
Okay, now let's get into saving some money.
Yeah.
Okay,
What do you have on
I'm
mind?
I'm a business owner.
Yeah.
I get a lot of USD from the American clients and the
Yes.
European clients,
Yes.
and my CA has been behind me to figure out for a solution, because we've been burning thousands of dollars in the
Yeah.
transaction fee,
Yeah.
right? And in our last conversation, you introduced me to stable coins,
Yeah.
and which could possibly a solution. So can we go,
Yeah.
deep dive in it a little
Let's
bit?
talk about it. So you were telling me that you want to save cost on, foreign transactions, right? Stablecoins is an interesting concept because you could send money, or you could receive money from your clients right away, almost like sending a text message,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I don't think it's possible right now. It is possible if you have like an international debit card, if your bank account is added.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the service providers can give it to you in a few minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Domestic transactions, no problem. Like in India, you have
Sure.
UPI. In
Sure.
Canada, we have other things. In US, we have other things. But for cross-border transaction, other parties get involved, and there is other technologies like wiring the money and Swift technology used, where you can wire the money, like even very very large amounts of money, but it costs a lot of money as a fees.
Mm-hmm.
For the operators that charge you a smaller fees, they will likely send the money in like 3 to 5 days, which is what you're probably experienced,
Correct.
because you don't want to pay the fee. Sometimes you might be willing to wait.
Yes.
uh, and then we have the cryptocurrencies where you can receive the money in Bitcoin, but I believe you might be, worried about the volatility that Bitcoin brings, right?
Yes.
So I've I've seen operators like you would, if you received Bitcoin, you would want to convert it right away. Yes, and then if you're not in a city or
Also, sorry, I'm interrupting, but what essentially happens is in India, you really can't hold USD
yeah,
unless you have a dollar account.
yes,
And given the conversion rates and the
yeah,
transaction fees and the cost of Swift and all of that, it at times just doesn't make any sense to
sure,
hold that USD,
yeah,
or you have to hold a USD for a much longer period,
yeah.
right? So I think that's where probably stablecoin comes into
Yeah,
play.
so you're right. So it kind of is the middle ground,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Bitcoin is fast. You can hold Bitcoin. It's volatile though,
Mm-hmm.
right? So stable currency, as the word stable is, it's in the phrase itself. Uh, it is backed by central currencies. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the stable coins are backed by US dollars.
Can you give me some examples of stablecoins?
USDC as an example,
Okay,
right? So it's backed one to one. So
like one USDC is equal to
yeah, they
one
will have to
USD.
reserve that as a reserve currency.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Something like
so
gold ETF.
yeah, so they want gold. They are
Okay,
obviously, it's not like once you want to get paid, you will get paid because they are backing it.
correct.
So this is a currency where it's kind of backed by the central bank, if you may,
So
right?
this is not hedging against the inflation, right?
No, you will still suffer from inflation. If you have to suffer from inflation, you will suffer from currency
Okay,
fluctuation. But that's not, it's the point is Bitcoin as an asset would go up and down,
okay.
right? And then when you convert it to US dollars, then the currency hedge comes into play here,
Got you,
right?
got you.
In this case, or Bitcoin, any cryptocurrency, because it fluctuates so much.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it solves that fluctuation problem. right?
Okay.
So it gives you the speed of a Bitcoin that it clears right away
Right.
because of the decentralized thing that you were
Right.
talking about.
Right.
It no longer needs so many days to clear and
Also, the
settle
transaction fee is lower because it is
because it
decentralized.
is decentralized, because it's much faster. So if you
Hmm.
send $100, you're not going to get $96 in value, in worth, right?
Right.
You're going to get, say, 99.5. It's not widespread. In
Okay.
future, what will happen is, if it's like Visa is proposed to be a partner, if it becomes widespread, that Visa, so you could
Okay.
hold a Visa card, you can receive stable coins. You're not in a rush to convert it yet,
Hmm.
right? You can hold it,
Hmm.
and when you need the money, you can go get coffee, right? Instead of that, like in a Bitcoin, if you need the money, you can't
Hmm.
wait. Let's say it loses 20%, and it has been going up and down all the
Correct.
time. It does, right?
Correct.
So when you go and, let's say, buy a new office furniture, you might be paying more just because the value of the currency that you're holding went down. So stablecoin solves that problem, right? Where
Awesome.
you don't have to. And then the other part of it is, which it might disrupt, beyond just the payment infrastructure that I just described, was, so you travel with Hilton, or whatever, Marriott, or with, let's say, I stay in Canada, so Air Canada Aeroplan point system,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Some of these partners are, and each of these have value differently, right? As
Correct.
you can imagine, a
So when you're
hotel
talking about value, you're talking about a loyalty point value.
loyalty point
Okay,
value,
got you.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. So stepping in a different direction, right? So for a loyalty business,
Mm-hmm.
right, as an example, so it's not just the payments that might get disrupted. Other companies might use it as a, not just as a marketing tool that we are cool and we're adopting a new technology, but actually
Sure.
might have meaningful consequences for the customers, right? So each of these loyalty points has a different value, right? And you as a
Right.
consumer have to remember what it is, because if you
Right.
like if you want to encash some of your loyalty points, and you're getting 2 nights, but you really need 3 nights, you want to buy enough points for the third night, you go and you see there's a bonus scheme.
Yeah.
You really have to know what the value is, whether that bonus scheme
Yeah.
is good or not. You can exchange, at least in US and Canada, through points.com. You can exchange one vendor versus the other, but the exchange value keeps going and down, up and down. So it's almost like currency. Like, you have to understand, should I pay this much for the dollar and buying, or should I wait for
So are
another?
you trying to explain a scenario where probably I'm drinking Starbucks coffee every day, so I accumulate a lot of Starbucks points,
Yeah,
and that I can exchange for the flight tickets that I'm booking?
it's money.
Yeah, it
You
is
do whatever
money.
you want with
Yeah,
it,
it is money.
right? So Starbucks is always, usually is at the forefront of adopting technology, right?
Hmm.
They were one of the first few companies. Starbucks business model is amazing, right? They
Hmm.
hold billions of dollars of credit for free. They don't have to pay fees on it,
Correct.
because people
Correct.
deposit money in their account.
Correct.
And people do it because they love Starbucks and they love for getting points, right? Unfortunately, you can't use Starbucks points to buy airline tickets, right? You can't do
Today,
that today.
as
You
of
can't,
today. Yeah.
right? And they might want to keep it that way, because why would they? Like, it's
Yeah.
loyalty
Yeah.
points,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But given how Starbucks is like a, forward thinking company, and they might use it as a marketing ploy, right?
Sure.
Basically, that they're, they want the best technology for their consumers.
Sure.
um, but in that case, look at the benefit, right? So payments is one thing. It's just backed by US dollars, or in future it might be Indian rupees,
BRICS is the new
um,
currency.
or other currencies that we have been hearing in the news, right? So in that case, it's just money, right? You can spend it, right?
So
So
understood. So now I'm just going to switch gears a little bit, right? So we all know that US put out sanctions on
yeah.
Russia when they attacked Ukraine and stuff like that. So do you think apart from individuals, can Russia get into stable coins or something like that?
In fact, why
How
don't
I mean,
we?
how does stable coin
No, so
impact
you're okay. So we're shifting
geopolitics?
gears. Yeah, geopolitics a little bit, right? I'm certainly not a geopolitical expert here, but
Hmm.
having lived through enough years, there's enough countries out there where sometimes, through various reasons, their own currency fluctuates a lot, right?
Hmm.
Russia, obviously, US imposed sanctions
Hmm.
on them. They, in fact, blocked the payment method, Swift payment method, because they control the tech. In fact, a lot of
Okay.
people didn't realize that. They thought it's just, protocol, right?
Okay.
That anyone can use. They didn't realize that this technology is actually owned by the US. So they used that, weaponized that basically, and
Okay.
blocked it. And not just US, but all the Western countries coordinated. And a lot of their reserves, I believe close to $300 billion, was locked in. In
Right.
fact, what they're doing with that money is that the interest they're earning from that is actually funding the war. They're buying weapons. I can't be 100% certain on that, but they're using the interest to
Fund the
help
war.
Ukraine, actually. So with Russian money. So
That is
but
crazy.
it's crazy. So but pulling back a little, so Argentina is a good example, right? They have suffered through inflation. In a good year, their inflation is like 40-50%
That is crazy.
in a good year. In bad years, it can be 0%. Like basically, there's no growth. Or it can be like in a few years ago, it was 200%, was in the news. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I
a
do
few years
remember.
ago, just a few years ago.
23, right?
Yeah, just a few
Yeah.
years ago. But do you know that in the 90s, it was like more than 2000% briefly? So you can imagine that countries that don't manage their monetary health well, their citizens are stuck.
Even
Argentina,
Zimbabwe, right?
Zimbabwe, yes,
Yeah.
these are good.
I have a $1 trillion Zimbabwe note, by the way.
In Argentina, I remember watching a video where they, instead of buying wallpaper, it was cheaper to just stick the $20 bills, pesos, on the wall. That was cheaper rather than buying wallpaper. I don't need to make fun because, but look at how interesting that is. It is one of the economies where nearly, I believe, it's 15 to 20% of their cash reserve that the citizens hold is actually in US dollar cash, like physical cash. Imagine hundreds of billions of dollars stored in under the mattresses in a country. Nearly 20%, I believe, is the number, right?
Crazy.
Where they store just physical cash because they don't trust the their native sort of country's currency to hold its value consistently, right?
So you're suggesting that Messi has a mattress?
Messi has a mattress, this time in Miami, but where he can conveniently hold US dollars. But I don't know if the Messi's there was news also to being loaned to Liverpool for some time. I don't know. There's just rumors. Anyway, but yeah, it's just crazy stories, right? So in these countries, so the poster child for USDC stable coins, right? That citizens of countries who feel insecure
Right.
about their own currency and they're worried about fluctuations, right? You described fluctuation problem from your angle as a
Yeah.
business operator.
But I
It's
was
significant, but
restricting.
it's not that significant. Like if you were holding pesos, you would be Argentinian pesos, you would be seriously worried. Like
Correct.
imagine doing business, you're
Yeah, 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 yeah.
in the US, and then serving clients in sitting in Argentina, serving clients in US or India or wherever, right? So
Correct.
it's brutal, right?
Correct.
So stablecoin solves that problem, right? Which is basically it gives you, I mean, for them, the speed of conversion is not even like, okay, it's good, right? It's the fluctuation that's the problem, right?
Okay, now sorry, I'm interrupting, but I really want to understand as a from the business point of view,
Sure.
right? Now, to actually work with stable coins, do I have to register my company in some place like in one of those islands, right? Like Malta or
No. And in
you've been
fact,
to one of those islands,
yeah, I've
right?
been to Cayman. I worked
Yeah,
there.
Cayman
Yeah,
Islands.
I worked.
Have you been to Epstein Islands?
No, I have not been. Contrary to some of the, I don't think my name is out there. I'm not that famous. I don't think anyone cares about me. No, you don't have to. And then
Okay.
it's not.
So I
It's
can still be registered in India and I can
yeah,
still
yeah,
get
yeah.
into
It's just
stable
that
coins. Okay.
the
Amazing.
interesting angle to all this is this, right? So you stay in India, so we
Correct.
have a fairly stable currency. Yes, it's getting devalued. So for you might make sense, would have made
So as an
sense.
individual, I hold my Bitcoin in BitBNS, right?
Yeah.
So I can use the same
Will
tool.
it'll evolve.
Okay.
Like I said, it might just be easy, very easy, like having a Visa card that accepts stable coin. So you will use the Visa as a
Okay.
payment methodology as the service provider.
So this has already happened or it's
It is
happening or
happening
it's going to
now.
happen in
So
future?
regulatory frameworks became easier.
Okay.
The US cleared a few regulations. The Europe cleared a few
I'm sure India
regulations.
will follow.
India will follow. India
Yeah.
taxes quite heavily on any cryptocurrencies. I believe
Correct.
30%.
Correct.
So it's getting there.
Correct.
India has other things that they are focused on right now.
Sure.
But the interesting part is it could be just easy as holding a Visa card, and then what money you have is stable coins. However, how many vendors accept stable coins in India? None, right? Or not many, if at all, right? Same with cryptocurrency. It's not like you can walk out and get coffee in cryptocurrency, right? Bitcoin,
Correct.
for example, same thing,
Correct.
right? So our infrastructure is not there yet. I don't know whether it is in the strategic interests of the country
Mm-hmm.
to have
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin, because or infrastructure, or like, after all, it takes power away from the central bank,
Sure.
right? And we are still maturing as an economy, and it's going through its own cycle of evolution.
Correct.
What it also does is, if you think about it, stable coins, 95% of the stable coins in the world are backed by US dollars,
Mm.
right? Is it in the interest of a country like India or China to adopt this
Mm.
as is, or do they want to launch
Probably,
this?
which is why they're probably charging 30%, right?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah,
So
because
the
I'm
more money flows through these decentralized networks as opposed to the central banks, the
hmm,
power of controlling monetary policy keeps
just
going away,
switch. Yeah.
right? Because it's so small as a number, it really doesn't matter in India, right? I
As
think
of
they want
today.
to keep it
As
that
of
like
today.
that. Even every country, right? It's
I'm
not that
hoping that
significant.
after
Not
this.
in Argentina, because imagine 10-20% of the money is physical cash, is not in their local currency, and a big chunk of that got converted into USDC,
Mhm.
the stable coins backed by US dollars, which is almost like equivalent of US dollars.
Right.
So they have less and less tools to manage the monetary policy. Like, imagine if they raise the interest rates of their local currency, like what does that do? Because a significant chunk of money is not in that
Sure.
currency at all, right?
Sure.
So I don't know whether India, it makes sense, strategic interest.
So, but I think, I mean, India has been charging a higher interest rate on, sorry, not interest rate, but higher tax
Tax rate, yeah.
percent tax rate for on cryptocurrencies or exchange of cryptocurrencies in
Yeah.
the INR, right? But I'm hoping that things will change as the adoption increases in
Yeah.
India. As I think I'm hoping after this podcast goes out, a lot of businesses start having a stable
I
coin
think you're
account.
delusional that you think so many people care about this podcast. However, one of the interesting things, dynamic, as a country thinks about these policies, right? If
Yeah,
you imagine, uh, US dollar, people have been pulling money out of US dollars,
correct,
gold,
correct.
money going into
Countries are
gold.
doing it, right?
Countries are
Japan
holding
did
more and
it,
more
China did
gold.
it. Yeah.
And it's like this, it's, gold as a, sorry, the US dollars as a reserve currency, it's as an
Hmm.
asset.
Hmm.
It used to be in the 70s, late 70%, right?
Hmm.
It's now, I believe, in the 50s at this point, right?
Correct.
In a matter of not even 20 years or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Not on transaction volume. For transactions, most of the global transactions happened backed by US dollars in the US dollar currency,
Okay.
right? So if stablecoin picks up,
Mm-hmm.
US, it's a dual effect. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what percentage, but they're serious enough to have a framework right now. What percentage will it have to be for the Federal Reserve to think that this things are getting out of control? So that's why they've launched this stable coins, which are backed by US dollars, which inherently means they can control the flow of US dollars, and inherently means they can control the monetary policy right down to stable coins. So as a business, you can hold stable coin, let's say in a country where you want to spend stable coins and it's widely available.
Sure.
But interestingly enough, this technology is also skipping over their one of the main payment methodologies that they use,
Used.
Swift, right?
Yeah.
So while it reduces the dependency, or reduces the usage of Swift, central bank backed stable coins gives them control.
Okay.
But listen, this technology is not just for central banks.
Mm-hmm.
There will be many private players who use this technology, right?
Hmm.
If you remember, 2025, it was almost like a graveyard of tokens that expired, right? So today you have these meme coins. It had value. You were exchanging with me,
Hmm.
and tomorrow it's dead, right?
Sure.
So there's no liquidity, there's no exchange, there's no other site to which you can exchange it for, right?
Sure.
It's almost dead money, right? So almost 12 million tokens got projects, basically meme coins. Dogecoin was one of the exceptions, I
Yeah,
think,
but
because
Elon
Elon backed it,
pumped
talked
it
about it,
to the
survived it
next
well,
level. Yeah.
but a lot of others didn't, right?
Yeah.
So private companies will use this technology,
Hmm.
and then it may not be just backed by the central bank, right? In
Hmm.
which case it gives you the flexibility, volatility, reduces the volatility risk, and yet you are in the decentralized part of it. Like, the central banks don't control it. All kinds of things happening. I'm sure it'll keep happening. It'll be interesting, but yeah, it'll be good to watch out and learn about it in future, I guess.
Sure. So to summarize quickly, right? So in the old world or the in the old order, we were transacting in USD, and to hedge against inflation, we would buy gold or silver. So in the crypto age, probably what's going to happen is we're going to transact in USDT and we're going to hold Bitcoin or Ethereum to hedge against the inflation.
And as far as the US is concerned and the big investment banks in the world, it is significant, right? So
Hmm.
crypto as a asset class where you hold in your portfolio as a play, like it's not like earlier you would remember like big CEOs of investment banks would come out and say we don't care about crypto because it
Correct.
doesn't have any inherent value, it doesn't work like gold or anything else, right?
Correct.
It's just volatility and
Pump
people,
and dump and all those
yeah,
things. Yeah.
so they don't care about it. But
Yeah.
that changed, right? Now
Yes.
pension funds, mutual funds,
Everybody is getting into it.
sovereign
Yes.
funds, everybody's holding that as an asset class. So that changed, and a lot of us thought it won't, right?
Correct.
So stablecoin, it's a dual play, mostly from the US perspective right now. It's backed by US dollars.
Mm.
Maybe other central banks use that as a play as well, right?
Mm.
China, Brazil, Indonesia, India, maybe they launch their own stable coins where if their citizens truly want a
Correct.
decentralized option, then maybe they'll launch that. Maybe they
Mm.
think it's not in the strategic interest of their country to have that, right?
Mm.
So we'll see how it plays out.
Sure. Amazing. Do you think we can get some experts in the
Yeah,
next podcast that we do, right? Who are people who are actually doing
from the
this?
trenches. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We will call
Okay.
some people who are from the trenches. I'm sure they'll have other insights that we don't have here.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. So looking forward to that.
same here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.